Welcome to The Explainer. You know, I am absolutely pumped to share this story with you today because the device you're using to watch this right now, whether it's a sleek smartphone, a tablet, or a laptop, shares a highly surprising ancestor, a simple, dirty glass light bulb. So let's just dive right into it. It all kicks off with a really weird mystery. Back in the late 19th century, the famous inventor Thomas Edison noticed something bizarre about his early carbon filament light bulbs. Over their lifetime, the glass would discolor, turning yellow and then brown. But strangely, it only happened on one single side. How on earth does a slightly toasted piece of glass eventually lead to the digital age?
Here's the roadmap for this explainer. We're tracking a massive technological leap today, starting with Edison's light bulb observation in the 1880s, moving to the triode tube in 1906, hitting the Model K calculator in 1937, and finally arriving at the ENIAC supercomputer in 1945.
All right, Section 1, the Edison effect, discovering a scientific anomaly.
Okay, so to make sense of this, we've got to peek inside those early light bulbs. They needed a perfect vacuum inside, right? Otherwise, the carbon filament would just immediately burn up in oxygen. And inside that vacuum, we get something called thermionic emission. Sounds super complex, but essentially, when that carbon filament gets incredibly hot, electrons literally boil off its surface, just like steam off a pot of hot water. And with no air molecules in the way to bump into, these electrons just kind of float around unobstructed. Folks back then simply called this floating electron cloud the Edison effect.
But here's the thing. They weren't just floating peacefully. Edison was running direct current, or DC electricity, through these bulbs. That meant those boiled-off electrons were fiercely attracted to the positive wire inside. So they accelerated rapidly, whizzed straight past the wire, and actually crashed right into the glass. That continuous, invisible bombardment of electrons, that is exactly what discolored the bulb on just that one positive side. Which brings us to Section 2, controlling electrons with tubes, guiding the flow of electricity.
Now, that quirky patch of brown glass sparked a massive scientific race to actually control these free-floating electrons. Because, think about it, taming them meant completely revolutionizing electronics. Step 1 happens in 1904. John Ambrose Fleming takes a bulb, adds a second electrode, and bam, creates a one-way street for electricity called a diode. But the absolute game changer was Step 2. In 1906, Lita Forrest adds a third component right between the hot filament and the plate. It was just a sparse wire mesh he called a grid. With 3 electrodes in play, he brilliantly named it the triode.
To really wrap our heads around why this was such a huge deal, think of it like this. Changing the electrical voltage on that tiny little wire mesh grid, even just a tiny bit, effortlessly controls a massive flow of electrons passing through to the anode. It's exactly like standing on a high cliff, using a tiny ounce of energy to turn a small water valve, which then unchains this massive roaring waterfall. This rapid response allowed for high-frequency amplification. It's the exact technology that took a super faint electrical signal and boosted it enough to make the very first transcontinental phone call a reality in 1915, a total game changer.
Moving on to Section 3, tricking electrons into math, connecting circuits to Boolean algebra.
All right, so we've got tubes that can amplify electricity. Awesome, but how in the world does that give us a thinking computer? Well, enter Claude Shannon in 1937. He had this absolute breakthrough realization that electric circuits could perfectly map to George Boole's mathematical foundation for logic. In Boolean logic, a true statement is simply a 1 and a false statement is a 0. Check out this AND gate table on the screen. The output is only true, or 1, if both input A and input B are true. Shannon realized, hey, you could build a physical electronic circuit using simple switches that behaves exactly like this abstract mathematical table. Now you might be sitting there wondering, okay, so what? Why is this such a big deal? The profound, earth-shattering big deal here is that we literally just tricked a bunch of electrons into doing math for us. By physically connecting these simple logic gates, things like AND or exclusive OR, together you can build increasingly complicated circuits to perform real, complex mathematical addition and subtraction, all without a human brain doing the calculation. Section 4, the Model K calculator, George Stibitz's kitchen table invention. So in that exact same year, 1937, a guy named George Stibitz decided to take these concepts and physically build them into the world's first working digital calculator. Now, don't picture some sleek, futuristic prototype here. The Model K was built in a single night right on Stibitz's kitchen table. He scrapped it together using a few batteries, some light bulbs, electromechanical relays, and get this, he literally cut up an old tin of tobacco to use for the input switches. No way, right? It was incredibly unglamorous, but miraculously it worked. It could mathematically add two 1-bit binary numbers together. And it eventually evolved into the Model I, which utilized 400 relays to calculate complex 8-digit numbers. But they hit an undeniable wall pretty quickly. See, these early calculators relied on electromechanical relays. Basically, physical metal switches, constantly clacking open and closed. They were slow, they were extremely loud, and all that physical friction meant they suffered from massive wear and tear, breaking down all the time. I mean, you couldn't run a quiet office with these deafening machines clicking away. So, to compute faster, we needed a switch with 0 moving parts. We needed to go back to the vacuum tube triodes. Unlike relays, vacuum tubes were completely noiseless, entirely electronic, and could switch states instantaneously just by altering a voltage.
Which launches us into Section 5, the ENIAC revolution, the world's first electronic programmable computer.
So what happens when you combine the digital logic of Boolean math with the absolute lightning speed of vacuum tubes? Well, you get ENIAC. It came online in December 1945, but it was a monster. It weighed 30 tons. Let that sink in. 30 tons. It was an absolute behemoth that took up an entire large room, and it drew so much power, an astonishing 175 kilowatts, that it actually required its own dedicated electrical generator right there in Philadelphia just to keep all those tubes glowing without dimming the city lights.
But despite that ridiculous, massive size, its impact was completely earth-shattering. ENIAC could complete 500 operations per second. Now, to put that into perspective, back then the word computer literally referred to a human being sitting at a desk doing pen and paper math. So 500 operations per second, that was unimaginably mind-bendingly fast. Plus, unlike the hardwired machines that came before it, ENIAC wasn't just a one-trick pony. It could be completely reprogrammed to solve entirely different problems.
And it was that exact flexibility that made ENIAC instantly vital to world history. In fact, as you can see here, the director of Los Alamos at the time stated flat out that it would have been completely impossible to arrive at any solution without the aid of ENIAC. They desperately needed it for the incredibly complex computations required for developing the hydrogen bomb. It was just a massive, entirely unprecedented leap forward in sheer computational power. However, for all its revolutionary power, ENIAC was ultimately built on thousands of glorified light bulbs. And that was its fatal flaw. Those internal glass filaments, they required constant, massive heat. That meant they consumed absolutely tons of power, even when they were sitting completely idle doing zero math. Also, because they were glass tubes with complicated internal electrodes, you couldn't really shrink them down any further. Miniature was simply not an option. And worse, they were incredibly unreliable. Inside ENIAC, a hot vacuum tube would break down every few days, and someone had to manually hunt it down and replace it. The absolute longest the machine ever ran without a failure was just 116 hours. So, while vacuum tubes were an incredible stepping stone, they were far too fragile, massive, and power-hungry to be the permanent future of computing.
Which brings us right back to you watching this explainer today. If the earliest computers were 30-ton, fragile monsters made of failing hot glass, isn't it an absolute miracle that we now do all of this invisibly, flawlessly inside tiny solid pieces of silicon? That sleek device you're holding right now is the direct, fascinating descendant of a curious little scientific anomaly inside Thomas Edison's dirty light bulbs. Honestly, when you think about how far we've come, from boiling electrons in a glass vacuum to putting supercomputers in our pockets, it really leaves you with one massive question. What impossible technological leap are we going to make next?